Welcome to episode. You know what episode this is?
65.
65. Well done.
I
So
I read your brief,
I
Tom.
know, I know. I am impressed. I am very impressed.
Soapy.
Um, episode 65, Social Selling 2.0, the last one of the year. So next week we're going to do a best of, and we were just looking at some of the stats. Carson, do you want to tell who the best of is going to be next week?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to air the number one episode of the year, which was none other than Bren Tillman.
Yeah, the most downloaded episode of the year. So congratulations and thank you, Bren.
Yes,
So
thank you.
we're doing a replay of that. I think she was pretty early this year too, like March or somewhere around there. So
Yeah, that was early
Wow.
on.
Was it that long
Recast.
ago?
yeah, I think so.
Oh man.
I know.
That's crazy.
I know.
But let's do
What
it.
a good year with you guys. A great year of learning, and we've had a very engaged audience. So very grateful for that as we head into the holidays.
Yeah. So if
Yeah,
you're
for
online
sure.
listening, please jump in. Let us know that you're here. What we're going to go over today is kind of looking ahead. We kind of looked back last week, and this week we're going to look ahead as what we see coming or what we think is coming around sales, social, and demand creation. Um, no pressure. We just have to come up with some right answers on that for 2024. So, the way we were going to do this is kind of a round robin. I think Carson. Maybe we'll start with you. Get your thought. We'll kind of go around. Each of us get our thoughts, and I'm sure there'll be other thoughts and comments along the way. But what is your as we get started? What is your take on 2024?
Yeah, love the question, and would love to hear thoughts from our audience too. Thanks so much for being on and being with us. Please feel free to post where you're joining us from. I think as we head into the new year, and I know we're talking about this also a little bit later in the show, but I do have to say AI integration is going to be a big one. AI is going to continue to play a very significant role, and I think we're going to break out and talk more about that a little bit later. But there's a lot of ways that it will, just from really arming ourselves with knowledge and information to getting signals, how we're going to react and respond, ideally from a more informed probability matrix perspective. I think that's why it's going to be so important. I think some of the other areas that I'm seeing where we're trending toward from a sales perspective is, just the role of a CRM. Really how it can be leveraged and how it can be integrated into all of our other tools. I just speaking from my own vantage point, I've become very heavily reliant on it from all of the signals that it picks up from different places. Mostly from our marketing tools. I'm using it a lot right now to create and build campaigns, going out and doing some manual work to ensure that we're building lists and building community. We talk about that a lot on this show. And then I think the last element is it's kind of twofold. It is number one around the importance of the brand of the seller, the sales culture of the organization that they or we in this case work for, but also how we meaningfully create relationships to earn the right to be the trusted advisor. I think, when I think about customers, existing customers are so important because if you've earned that right, competition is fierce right now, so we've got to do everything we can to drive that stake into the ground and prioritize existing customers. But when it comes to reaching out to new customers, whether it's leveraging referrals, replicating a success model, finding very focused ways to do outreach, social selling, et cetera, but also scale approaches, it's going to be all about the knowledge that we have and that ability to really sell the problem, as opposed to selling a solution, being the solution as opposed to going in and just trying to diagnose blindly. If I'm hopefully I'm being very clear to say that there's going to be a big responsibility for sellers going into 2024. All the information is going to be at your fingertips. You need to go out and get it. You need to use it effectively, and you also need to focus on the relationships.
Wow. Brandon, I think there's some background noise on your end, possibly. There's a couple things you said, Carson, there that we should unpack a little bit. One is the fact that, I agree with you 100%, right? The CRM is your friend. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times people have looked at the CRM as, oh crap. And I have a CRM company, right? So I know this firsthand. Is a lot of times people look at the CRM as a ball and chain, but I am seeing every day when you're using that data from the CRM and you're using it to drive a lot of the AI even, it really is your friend. And so you're not just entering data, I just entering data because my manager asked for it. I'm entering data because it's actually going to turn around and help me and do that. So I think that's a huge take for next year. I really do think the role of CRM is going to
And
change.
Tom, you hit on something important there. I think it falls incumbent upon leadership to set the tone, right? Because it's all about how you embrace and express and articulate the value of the CRM. If it is just managers coming in and saying, you got to make sure your pipeline's clean, you got to make sure your pipeline's full, but not really giving the why behind it and how important it is. Because like right now, I spend time every day with my teams looking at pipeline for current frame, future frame. It is a lot more impactful and important to look at what is some of the aspirational pipeline for next year that could be massive, that could be monumental, that sends everybody to President's Club, right? Those are the types of things that we need to be thinking about as leaders. And that is how you can use pipeline and CRM as a friend to be able to arm you with, hey, these are the big deals that we need to go after and chase that are going to send everybody to club. That's how we as leaders have to set the tone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a theory behind this too. I believe because some of the trends that I've been seeing and some of the conversations I've been having, and I think it's whether it's the CRM or it's doing the research or it's even using social as a communication channel, I believe that everything's catching up to companies now that we've been talking about for years. I believe over the, COVID, there was a bunch of excuses as to why we weren't hitting numbers during COVID because it was COVID, right? And it was like you could excuse and go, oh, the buyers are different, but it's because of COVID. And even moving up to COVID, buyers were changing it. I don't think it was hurting companies enough to cause them to really take some of these things serious. So CRM was necessary, but it wasn't being used the right way, and it was okay because the sales numbers were still producing. The same thing I think with social. I've had a lot of conversations with people over the last 4 years. The last several months, the conversations have changed a lot. They've changed from, well, this seems like it's a nice to have, to how can you help us? Right? I believe that the buyer behavior is changing so much more, and companies are going to trade shows and events and spending money, but no one's there. Or they're spending money and they're getting there, but they're not getting people into the booth because buyer behavior's changed. We don't go to shows to go do research now. We do our research year round. And when we go to the show, we go talk to the people we want to talk to. And the companies that don't have a social presence, they don't have anything other than their email going out, and they're waiting at their booth going, hey, we're over here. People walking by the aisles. I mean, we know that, right? They don't want to look because they don't want to get sucked in. I just believe that all these things that are affecting their closes and their revenue acquisition and their qualified pipeline are finally hitting an oh shit moment. And it's forcing them to go take a look at what additional can we get out of our CRM? What additional research can we be doing with social? How do we use content? And now with generative AI, I think a lot more people will be able to produce and share quality content. But I believe it's all because of that. I think it's just finally catching up to people that you can't just pedal harder doing the same things. Just, at some point it was 100 calls, now it's 150, and it's just not possible for somebody to make 250 or 300 calls a day. And they're starting to realize that we could do 500 calls a day. We're still not going to hit enough numbers to hit our goals. That's kind of my theory right now about it. What do you guys think?
I think you're a lot like Bob, and you're shy and you don't have any opinions. That's what I think. I think you and Bob need to.
Yeah, Carson, I don't know if you know it, when you were talking and you were saying great things and Tom and I started laughing, it's because we saw Bob's comment come up about being shy and have no
Absolutely.
opinions.
Yeah.
So,
Bob's on a roll again. We
No,
need to just get Bob in the show.
yeah.
That's what I think we need. We need an episode with Bob.
So Carson, you related to what Brandon just said, you pointed out something about competition never being higher or very a lot of competition, right? That's out there. I'm wondering if, as we look ahead, competition's not going to get less, right? Sales effectiveness is not going to, or the ability to do what we just talked about from using the old school sales techniques is not going to be any more effective. So do you think it's Carson, and based on what you just said, is it a combination of those things that you think are really going to drive what we're going to be doing in 2024?
Yes.
That was easy.
Now, look, the stakes are going to be really high, right? The competition is going to be fierce for, even our most prized customers. And I think that's why everybody's got to up their ante. And, we're going to turn the corner on this conversation here, I think, soon and talk a little bit about the role of AI in sales in 2024. But I mean, the technology, frankly, is going to play a part in every stage of the game, whether it's arming the buyer with intel that they need in order to make decisions. They're going to, quote unquote, need sellers even less likely in their process than ever before, meaning that the stakes are raised and you're going to get that one shining shot, or you're going to have that opportunity to it's going to I've seen the rise of the importance of customer success over the last several years. I've always been, or predominantly historically been, part of the account team, right? I've led the account teams. But we work very closely with specialist teams and customer success teams. And literally over the last 5 years, every year, the customer success team becomes more and more important because it's so critical that we're safeguarding that relationship, that we're continuing to bring value. We don't just sell something and pat ourselves on the back and move on. And now it's going to become all the more incumbent and imperative that we do that we really double down on our existing clients, that we're looking for additional ways to cross-sell, upsell, and again, continuing to prospect into those organizations. I challenge sellers because I find by default, we get comfortable and we rely on maybe 1 or 2 or 5 key contacts in most organizations. And where I've really tried to make my mark, and frankly, the only reason that I've been successful is because I've tried to drive a lot more net new, meaningful relationships within organizations, which helps you create that groundswell of influence. And that's where I really challenge sellers to look at the relationships they have. Do you have all of the relationships that you're going to need in order to be successful in 2024? And do you have blind spots with any of these relationships? Those things are of critical importance.
Brandon, you're having a hard time making me keep a straight face, but
we've got another special guest on today.
Yeah. That was Piper, everybody.
So Brandon, what's your take on what Carson's saying, especially more from the SMB perspective, the small, medium-sized business?
Yeah, I mean, I think across the board, customer experience is everything now, and it's from the beginning to the ongoing. I think there's a lot of, is Carson saying competition is heavy, it's strong, it's fierce, whatever the right adjectives we're going to use. We need to also be blocking out our competition by staying very closely connected and valuable to our customers. That shift of being thought leaders, especially from a C-suite, right? From leadership, of being thought leaders, not, hey, here's our latest product, here's this, here's that, but help be thought leaders, helping create conversation, helping them think about new things, and staying that very strongly relevant to them, that they don't even think about needing you, not because they can't buy the widget from somebody else, but because all the other peripheral that you provide and bring to the table. And whether it starts at the C-suite level, but then your customer success people, your ops people, whoever else it may be, the more that, and this is really where the value of social is. And I know that a lot of times with C-suite, it's like, oh, social, it's cute. It's not freaking cute. It's necessary, right? Your people need to be communicating at scale other than buy my shit. or buy my next thing, right? We've got to be communicating at scale so that our buyers, our customers need us and want to be connected to us because they can buy the widgets anywhere. They can buy the services anywhere.
Brandon,
Sorry,
tell us how you really
I'll calm a little.
I really like the communication at scale, though.
Stop
like
holding back, Brandon.
Yeah. I think Brandon's just coming out. It's the end of the year. He's figuring, I've got to say my piece,
Yeah,
So-
it sounds like a lot of angst.
Well, you know what?
Angst.
In a way it is, and it's because I've played nice. Like I wanted to be like, oh yeah, look, early in my career, I've been told things like I had resting dick face. I told people like, oh, you're kind of arrogant when you have your opinion and stuff. And so as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, I want to be more understanding of other opinions and all that. And I totally do. And I didn't think I was being arrogant then. I just have a very strong opinion about what I know has worked because I've sold 3 companies. Like a 2 million, 18 million, a $6 million company that I built. And these things were so important. The buyer experience was everything. And we had a 94 to 95% renewal rate because we treated them the whole way through working on that renewal. We were sharing information with them. Now, granted, this is pre-Facebook. This is, early, well, even pre-LinkedIn. But we were still focused on all those things. If you're so valuable to somebody beyond your product, they're not going anywhere because they need you. They want you. They look at you as a valuable resource. And all of those things are still important today. We just activate it differently. And it's even easier now. Before we had things with people making phone calls every certain amount of weeks with things like, hey, we've been reading that this is going on in your industry. We wanted to make sure that we brought it to your attention, see if it was relevant to you or whatever. And now you can just do that in social media every day.
At scale, to your point.
At scale, right.
So I want to transition this. I'm going to give you my opinion or one of my opinions on next year, but I think it builds exactly on what both of you are saying. So it's not that I didn't know this, but after our Matt Dixon episode a couple of weeks ago or a few weeks ago, right, about the fear of messing up. And I'm seeing this maybe even in the last 6 months more than ever, is that decisions or lack thereof are not being made or are being made because of fear of messing up. And even where and what's interesting, even when you have a really good relationship, it's not like they just ghost you. You have a good relationship and they're like, you know what? I just don't feel comfortable doing this right now. Or I don't know. Or they'll come up with an excuse, but at least they're telling you the excuse versus ghosting you. So you've done a good job of building the relationship to at least get the communication back. But you're getting a lot of things that are excuses maybe, but at the end of the day, they're fear of messing up. And I think that the reason that happens, right, to all of us is what you brought up, Carson. There's a lot of attention and competition for attention. So there's a lot of people trying to grab your attention. You have organizations and influencers within the organization that are also weighing in because they've been doing their own research and so forth. So I do believe that one of the key things of next year is going to be, and I don't mean to be saying this to sell on the defensive. In fact, it's just the opposite, is how do you make sure that you addressed early and often this issue of fear of messing up versus fear of missing out. And as Matt explains, or they talk about in the Joel DeFett book, and as we went on the show, the things that we tend to do to try and get somebody to convince to get over that hurdle is not the right things that you do when somebody is concerned about messing up, right? Mm-hmm. I don't just keep going, yeah, but did you see the other 10 features that this does? And, I give you my ROI and all of it, which is what we want to do, right? We want to keep putting those there. So it's I think the fear of missing out is really going to be a big factor.
And it comes back to that buyer experience and being a value-added resource or however you want to say it, a thought leader, a valuable resource, a trusted advisor. If we're helping them think through problems from day one, as soon as, and that's where social is such an important thing. Somebody can come across your profile and see posts where you're going, hey, this is what customers in these industries are dealing with, and this is something that they're struggling with, and this is what we've seen is working. You're immediately, from a lens perspective, you're being seen as a resource, as a trusted advisor. And the more you can solidify yourself in that trusted advisor role and from that lens, the more likely they're going to follow and trust and have in it. The reason I think there's so much messing up too is, and you'll get me on my other soapbox, we opened the floodgate for startups over the last decade, and a lot of them sucked. They were good ideas, but they were poorly executed, or they sold these great value propositions because everyone went to the same school of how to craft a marketing message. And then people bought it and they didn't get the results. It was a waste of money and they had mud on their face. And now we're coming into this post, real big focus on SaaS, and people are starting to say, wait a minute, let's slow down a little bit. Let's think through this. Let's make good decisions. And that's why I believe for companies, it's even more important to establish that trusted advisor lens.
Because if you do, then you will truly understand what is the risk. And I think as we continue to see this shift toward buyer centricity, it's also the important to keep other buyers as a part of your strategy. And what I mean by that is a great way to de-risk is creating community. That can be a value add that you bring to bear. Sometimes it's more about the existing customer that I introduced to my prospect. They create a relationship, they form trust, and they can see right there what has helped this peer in the industry be successful just happened to be our solution. But it wasn't about me selling it or bringing up the ROI. It was about them helping them understand where they were in the journey and helping them understand how it will de-risk what they perceive the risk to be.
I want to ask a question on that. Two questions, actually. Carson, do you actually connect and have the two people, the other customer community, not just give them a testimonial, but actually have them start to engage and become buddies if at all possible, right?
100%. Look,
Okay.
I've found in many cases, there have been times where, a partner will have a better relationship with the customer than I do. And that's perfectly fine. What do I need to do to arm the partner with what they need from me resource wise to help them win? Furthermore, if I'm able to build a community of peers in an industry, I've worked in several different industries in my career. And if I'm able to connect them and they can have a commonality in their journey, and obviously there's some synergies between those groups, and this existing customer is able to share the story of how they partnered with my team and found success, all the better, because now the prospect can see that from their lens. And that starts to continue to de-risk the decision. I feel like the Matt Dixon episode, and frankly, even just reading Jolt Effect in my mind, like I felt like I unlocked some big mystery of the universe. It was like just suddenly you have this aha moment and you can see clearly and you understand, like now you look at every situation and you start to think, wow, it isn't that I need to sell more value. I just need to really understand the risk to the customer. And I go into every scenario now looking for the risk. What's at risk?
Well, and I think you brought up there's another point that you mentioned there, right? The community with the other customer, but also if you're building relationships with other employees that are quote unquote influencers in that organization, a lot of times the decision makers or the executives, if they're getting positive feedback from the other employees, then that's less risky as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're not a one-man band out there or a one-woman band. I think the key element is you've got to understand what is the next most important action that is within my locus of control that I can do. It's a domino effect. You just have to push down the domino. It doesn't mean I got to sell more, do more. Sometimes it's creating a scale sales army that's out there working on your behalf, going out and finding a great partner that has a great success story with a certain industry, and then figuring out, okay, what worked? Now, how do I replicate that? And how do I put that buyer as the focal point of what I'm doing? shine the light on them. Some of the best things that we do in our organization is get case studies published with customers. We're not sharing what we did so well. We're sharing what a customer was able to do because of our platform or because of our technology. That's the real win. That's what's exceptionally powerful, is when you can shine a light on a success story that a customer had because of you. And then ultimately you can ideally replicate that by creating additional relationships with and for that winning customer.
Yeah, totally. I want to hit a couple of these comments here. First of all, Bob has an interesting take here. We're entering a period of retrenchment, and I think we'll be there until around mid-November or early December for obvious reasons for next year. If that's true, I think that's going to amplify and magnify even the fear of missing out. I'm sorry, the fear of messing up even more so, right? If there is some sort of pressure on that. I also want to, very simply stated, right? When you're this is Jasmine, when you're a trusted advisor, you don't have to sell. But I think there's even more to that. What you're just saying, Carson, is just go be the trusted advisor and you will sell, right?
Right.
It's like there's a corollary to that.
But I also agree with Carson, and I guess all three of us are saying it. Matt Dixon and Jolt Effect completely changed my life this year.
One of the best books I read this year.
Yeah, hands down. And it's not just being a trusted advisor to get to the opportunity. You've got to be disciplined to stay the trusted advisor through the whole thing. And yes, you're going to lose some deals because they're not going to get over that fear of messing up. But if you switch gears on them, you're never going to get them back to the table.
And beyond.
Does that makes sense?
And beyond. What I find fascinating is even the level by which I still engage with past customers that aren't even technically in my sphere today. But what happens is maybe a year or two passes, and now suddenly that relationship might become very, very relevant to what you do if you continue to nurture that relationship. So I still look for opportunities today to help put customers that I know from years past into positions to win, whether it's creating relationships that could be fruitful for them. And guess what I've seen happen? I've made moves in my organization, and I've come back into a sphere where I can either help them or I can leverage that relationship to help someone else. And I think there's a lot of power to that. It's a force multiplier. By continuing to earn that right to be the trusted advisor and to continue to invest in those relationships, even when the value of that for you it's not completely apparent in that moment. It's amazing what goes around comes around.
Yeah. I mean, you're just being the trusted advisor and you're being an advisor. Go ahead, Brandon. I know, Brandon, did you say something? Because you got stopped there for a minute. I guess he's went away.
Yeah, you froze on me. I don't know if it was me or you, but am I here?
No, you're good.
Oh, good. And now I forgot what I was going to say. Actually, I do remember. I think that this early stage of the internet changed the way we sold because we had this new tool, and we started testing a bunch of things with automation, inbound marketing, mass email at scale. And now we're getting, 25 years into this, and we're starting to realize that nothing beats good old-fashioned relationships. And now we're creating new ways to get back to being a servant seller, to being the trusted advisor, to having that ongoing relationship. And as we keep saying, when you focus on being the trusted advisor above and beyond anything else, even closing the deal, you will close more deals.
Yeah.
But you just got to trust the process. And I think prior to the internet, we didn't have very many other options to try. And so the best salespeople that's what they did. I remember coming into my first company and as a sales guy and looking and saying, who's the number one salesperson? Since then, every single time, it's the one that has the largest network, knows the most people, but more importantly, the most people know them, and they're a connector. They connect people.
That's powerful.
And
I
they
think,
ended up being,
you know, what's great about that too, Brandon, is that trusted advisor, you don't always guide somebody to your product or your solution. You just guide them.
Yeah, and I think that's the point.
and your reputation precedes you.
For some reason, I think we have a little lag here. It's like, when you're watching the news and they're like interviewing somebody in Europe or something, and there's this lag between them. Anyway, well, hopefully it comes
I
back.
think Brandon might have slightly time traveled to 10 seconds into the past or something like that. So
That actually
he's
explains
been
it right
known
there.
to do that. I've seen him in the 50s. So
Yeah. Yeah, when he gets going, right? When he gets going, that 80 whatever miles an hour, whatever it is.
88.
Yeah.
88.
So I want to hit on
I don't.
I want to hit on Bob's comment here and get your guys' take on this, and then I have another sort of prediction for next year. Bob's saying it, even during times of fear of missing out, there are still risk takers. However, they may not be in the same TAM, total addressable market, you were targeting up to this point. Shifting your targeted TAM a bit, perhaps. It's an interest. I'll take a first cut at that. I don't see fear of missing out. To me, I'm seeing it with people that you would normally see as early adopters or risk takers, but they're still
messing up or missing out.
Messing up. Do I keep saying missing out? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I keep seeing the FOMO, fear of missing out. God, I shouldn't talk. I'll just let Brandon talk. Fear of messing up, even with people that are more early adopters and innovative and risk takers. And so it's an interesting thing is that early adopters and risk takers and FOMO may not necessarily correlate, because you could have FOMO with an early adopter or FOMO with somebody who's more conservative or even a laggard in terms of how they purchase. I don't know if you guys have seen anything like that, but I don't know if I've seen them as exactly the same.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this? So when I think about this from two lenses. Number one, and speaking from even just an enterprise or a commercial sales engine, I don't think a lot of sellers sometimes can see the big picture. They can't see the total addressable market. They can't see what opportunity could exist. They are used to things from a certain dimension where they've worked with a certain subset of people that have maybe said no or that have had fear of messing up in the past, and they accept that no and they move on to address what is probably the lower hanging fruit. And the challenge is a lot of times we become order takers in those situations, or we are kept in a box by a certain subset of customer stakeholders who aren't necessarily the power or the authority in that organization. So I think in order for sellers to see the true total addressable market, you've got to understand all the parameters in the playing field. You've got to understand the opportunity that's out there. And you've got to be able to, as a seller yourself, make bold asks and go out and do bold things, sometimes breaking glass. And it's not for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart. There's been a lot of times where I've gone out and I've created relationships that has upset other people in that organization. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to take that risk, because what am I risking as a seller? If I have no relationship with this organization, or if the same old person keeps telling me no, I mean, what am I really gambling by going here to try to create a relationship and find somebody who maybe has less fear of messing up, or a different type of situation, more desire or willingness to take that risk. So I think that's a big part of it. Now, to Bob's point, do we shift our total addressable market? Maybe. I think that also begets opportunity for businesses to look at new potential product lines, really stay at the pulse of what matters to your target prospect. I've definitely seen our organization completely shift our focus of what types of conversations are we trying to have, how are we trying to collaborate and partner, integrating and augmenting solutions as opposed to replacing and always being the right answer. So to Bob's point, I think the answer is yes all around.
Well, another interesting, great point there, Carson, is maybe it does make sense to adjust your product or even the offering or how your product is packaged a bit to be less risk or perceived risky, right? Provide a broader set of service, provide, Brandon, maybe a concierge service, like, for the whole. Again, do things that
Yeah.
eliminate those perceived risks. I think that's a really. It's not just one thing you
Mhm.
can do to reduce the perceived risk. That's the
Yeah.
point.
Well, and I think when you do things like that, like we've added concierge services into Fist Bump. Um, once it dawned on me and just shifted away from a SaaS model, to say, let's go do things for people and take that total stress off their plate. It also then forced us to start looking what our total addressable market was, and was there a better, more refined ICP? And it does shift, and I like what you're saying too, Carson. What you said with you're so often I think salespeople get into like this is the person I need to meet. This is the person I need to meet, and they're just not responding, not responding. Well, at that point, man, if you go around them or you go to the left or the right, or I mean, I learned from you, Carson, over the whatever 2 years, whatever, go flood all the people around them and get to know them and create that trusted advisor status with 5 or 6 people that report to them or go sideways to them or whatever. Like there's all different ways to go do it. And now's the time that we've got to take those risks and start doing that. And yeah, it may adjust your total addressable market. That one scares me a little bit more. When I saw Bob put that on, I'm like, oh man, that's an even bigger shift. And I'm a risk taker, right? I'm an innovator. And I was like, ugh. But yeah,
Well, I think what
the biggest social selling win I ever had was a 2-year journey, and 7 C-levels changed in that time. But I had over 200 first-degree connections in that organization, and the deal died on the table. But the reason that we were able to resuscitate it, even though it looked very different than when it started, was because of relationships. And it was because we were so entrenched that when they were bringing in new people and new executives, we almost had to read them in because we knew more than some of the other folks that were around. That's exactly what you just described, Brandon, is getting in there, swarming the influencers, getting entrenched in that organization so that you're such a valuable partner that you're not going anywhere. And whatever the deal looks like at the end, it's going to be with you. That's all you can control.
Well, and I think we on the other side of the table also can't be in fear of messing up, right? By going and building those relationships. Because I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to go around them or they're going to feel, and there's all this sort of fear of messing up the sales process. So I think it goes both ways, right?
It definitely does.
And it'll be interesting to see, but if we can, as sellers, we don't have that fear, does that help eliminate or reduce the fear on the other side of the table? I think it does, just for the reasons we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, look, most sellers won't do the stuff that we talk about and that I've done on this, that I've talked about on this show. Most won't do it because it does take some time to kind of build a platform to do it. It takes a lot of time to do what Brandon does, commenting meaningfully in people's comments every day. These things are time consuming. And there is also this, it's not always comfortable to go out and reach out to 20 executives because one told you to pound sand. But if you're willing to do it, you can achieve anything.
Yeah.
And I'll add to that, and not from a pluggy standpoint, but the way that I use LinkedIn and the way we train our team to use LinkedIn is more networking than salesy. And I mean, I'm 2-3 new calls a day, and I get on the Zoom and I meet people. And number one, I'm not in sales mode, right? I'm in networking mode. I want to, and if I can serve them and help them and introduce them, like I had one yesterday, I got 2 people I'm going to introduce them to today. And it may or may not turn into something for me, but I know that these 2 connections are going to do good for everybody. But when I get on the phone or I get on a Zoom or a Teams call with them and we start talking, when I talk about social, I've already proved to them the value of it because they're on a Zoom call with me. You know what I mean? And so you're saying, Carson, that a lot of salespeople won't do this stuff because it's too hard or it's out of the norm, or, it reminds me, Tom, you and I have talked about it. The partner in a company I spoke to, and he's, probably my age-ish, a little bit older maybe, and he's responsible for biz dev in the company. He's been in it for 28 years. And I said, well, do you still like what you do? And he said, no, I really don't, because I liked it when I could make 20 cold calls and 10 to 12 people would return it, and half of those would become a conversation, and half of those would become an opportunity, and half of those would become deals, and we were serving people. And he's like, now my emotions just aren't really working. And we've got to get outside of that thought process and try new things. And yeah, they're a little bit harder, but they're producing fruit. And so you got to take that risk and do that try. Give yourself an opportunity for an at-bat by getting outside of that comfort zone.
Well, and I would, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2 or 3 calls you say you're doing a day are almost entirely coming from social. And these are not people you knew already or met at a trade show or filled out a form on your website or you cold emailed or
No.
whatever. It's all from the social perspective.
Darren McKee made a post today on LinkedIn, and I'll misquote it, but you should go check it out. He was on a great episode that we did earlier in the year. And it was basically how he booked multiple meetings without even picking up a phone. And it was literally from commenting and being proactive around signals that he was seeing around LinkedIn. You know, he was connected with somebody at the competition who commented on somebody's post, and then he jumped into that post and engaged with that poster and got a meeting with that person. It's just the signals that we can get, the information that we can get right now. It's so powerful. And I mean, I've talked ad nauseum on this show about things that I've seen in my Sales Navigator feed that said there's a new executive here, there's a merger and or acquisition here. And I just immediately acted on that information, and that led to a relationship and ultimately led to a deal. Look, I know we can't connect the dots forward. You can't look and see exactly where a relationship is going to go. And it's hard sometimes to figure out which relationships to invest more in than others. But the key element is I can look back on a wealth of situations where I invested in a lot of relationships, and by and large, most of them over the course of time pan out.
Yeah. And that, I mean, for everybody listening, Darren's style, his technique I think it's a little different than mine, but pretty similar. And this is what I would love to share with everybody that you don't know. Use the activities you can control, which is publishing and commenting, so that the right people who you want to talk to see you and engage with you. And what that normally looks like is twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon, I go in and look at who's viewed my profile. Because the actions I can do, my post and my comments, get me in front of the right people and more of them, and then they go peek at my profile. Like, who is this clown, right?
Yeah.
They go look at my profile, and some of them will follow, some of them will connect, and some of them will look and leave. But if I go look at who's followed me, who's viewed my profile, and then you look and you see the ones who are the right ICP for you or around that ICP, if they're not a connection, you say, hey, you looked at my profile, thank you. Is it okay if we connect? And the ones that you're already connected to, they looked at your profile, you send it to them and say, hey, you looked at my profile, I looked at yours. Find something in there about that you can reference and say, give them confidence that you actually looked and not just sent something out, and say, hey, we should get on a networking call and get to know each other. Now, yeah, a lot of people ignore you and a lot of people say no, but we've dealt with that with cold calls and everything else before too. But what happens is, like, I got one this morning. I haven't responded to it yet because it was a little outside my time block, but looked at my profile. I think he followed me. I can't remember the details. Sent him a message. We connected. He sent it back and said, yeah, I've been watching your stuff. I'm really interested in the style of using social you guys use. I'd love to talk. Well, he looked at my profile but didn't ask for a meeting. But when I sent that, then he engaged me more and said, let's talk. That is not hard. It's just intentional. And anybody can do it. You just have to be intentional.
I think that's a great tip. The profile one is a great tool because I think people forget that, right? They didn't like my post or they didn't comment or whatever.
Gold.
Right. And yet that
Gold.
might be as much of a signal as anything else.
Well, because you also go through the story like James Gilman told, and I've shared it a couple times, president of a company, he's one of our concierge clients. We're helping him, up his LinkedIn game. And he went to his 20-year high school reunion, and he pings me the next day. He's like, oh my gosh, people who had never liked his post or commented on his post were coming up to him going, dude, you're crushing it on LinkedIn. I see it all the time. Call them lurkers, call them viewers, whatever term you want to use. Most people sit on the fringe and they watch. But what I find is if they sit on the fringe and they watch and they go look at my profile to see who I am, when I take the initiative to reach out to them and say, hey, we should connect. Hey, do you want to get on a call? I get a lot more yeses because they're uncertain. They're looking, they're trying to figure out. But when I open the door and invite them to it, they're like, yeah, let's do that.
So I want to hit one more of Bob's comments because he's not as shy as I thought he would be. He seems very shy and having opinions, unlike what he's
Bob is commenter of the year.
Yeah. But then I want to wrap up our show in the year with one final question, which I think is very appropriate for this year. But Bob's point here, marketing is going to need the help of sales in 2024 to learn how to do one-to-one messaging more effectively, because their marketing's forte is one-to-many. And he says, then bring them into the fist bump fold. But the idea here is that how does marketing help sales be more effective on their one-to-one piece there? Brandon, what do you think? Do you think that's legitimate?
Yeah, and I get marketing people get pissed off at me a lot. And it's like, look, but let's just be realistic. Marketing is conditioned like a bullhorn. They talk at people, and that's what they've been good at. The problem is a lot of buyers these days, they don't want to be talked at. They want to be talked with. And that's what sales has traditionally done really well because they've had to focus on the relationship. So marketing can help sales. I mean, again, this is why we built Fist Bump to do what it does. Marketing can definitely help sales, but they got to think we're changing that lens. We're not talking at people, and we're not talking about our products and services. We're talking with our customers, and we're talking about their challenges. We're talking about their goals. We're talking about things that they should be thinking about if they're not. We're offering them solutions. I mean, we can go back a decade plus, and whether you like his style or not, Gary Vee has been saying this for a decade. And it doesn't pertain to all companies, I get it, but give them everything. Give them your secret sauce. Tell them how to do things. Because most of them are still going to come back to you and say, will you do it for me?
Or help me do it.
Or help me do it. And that's the way that we become a trusted advisor in people's minds, is you tell them how to do it, how to do it, how to do it, how to do it. Oh, would you like my help? And marketing's just not used to that motion. They're used to speaking at people. And I think the marketers that are learning that, and then they're like one marketer who learns that well and has a sales force of 20 people, they can amplify their work 20x through the salespeople by helping them. But if they're still siloed and, oh, well, I'm doing this and here's my MQLs that sales doesn't care about because they've learned that the SAL is where everything goes to die, that's not efficient for the company.
It comes down to being able to understand and acknowledge how the other party can be a resource. I'm really fortunate because I'm best buddies with marketing. I always have been, but I also know that I do things very different than other sellers. Marketing picked me to be the voice of the sales field to meet with our CEO a month ago and can present to him. And so I've had a very great relationship with them because it's understanding of mutual goals and proactively seeking to make them winners. And we need each other. I think that's the key element. And it's only going to get better with AI. I mean, I can write a lot of my own marketing copy for events that I do thanks to AI. But where I need marketing is they are a resource. They are access to resources. And if I create an event in a way that helps them win and they lean in a way that helps me win or execute my sales plays or reach a very specific targeted audience, I can make very specific asks of them and they can go back and create things that are going to, in my hands, be even more valuable. And that's the key. That's where it turns into the match made in heaven.
Yeah. That lens that you have, that filter that you do, Carson, and everything you talk about, what I always hear you say is help other people win.
That's it. It's what it's all about. Whether it's your customer, it's your colleague, your partner, whatever it is, it's always about helping other people win. Sometimes it's helping my competition win. If I know I can't and I'm not the solution, I'll send leads my competition's way because I know that they'll reciprocate when the time is right. I think that's the key is, be that go-giver.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
Bob will love that reference.
So final question for 2023. I think it's appropriate given 2023. Carson, and I'll start with Carson. I'd like all of us to answer it, what we think. What do you think the most impactful one thing? What do you think AI will provide in 2024 that will most impact how we operate as sales?
I'd have to go to the efficiency element. What it has given me in the way of time back in, people thought I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn before, but, being able to go back and do a video or to put together an event. And the fact that I can literally have a Chat GPT or a Microsoft Copilot go in and create a synopsis for these things in seconds flat just by feeding it intel, that saves me 30 minutes that I can go out and do more activities. The amount of intel that it arms me with, I can find out key insights about customers and executives. The fact that I can use different tools, like Humantic and Octopus to go out and automate things. That's where it's really having an impact for me personally as a seller, but also just as a person. It's giving me so much time back to go out and do really more meaningful things, knowing who to react and respond to, what intelligence to react and respond with, how to show up with value to my customers and my colleagues, just nabbing intel from here or there and funneling that to my team. It's just making me so much more effective because it's making me so much more efficient.
Okay. Efficiency. So Carson's efficiency. Brandon, what do you think?
Well, and Carson tapped on this too. I mean, he led with efficiency, but he was also saying it elevates his game. Because I think AI can make us better. AI can make us more consistent. Like one of the things that I heard Carson just say is that he could go into AI and say, help me create this. Well, whatever this is. A lot of times we didn't think of building those things before because we just went, gosh, I can't do that. It would take too much time, or I'd have to go to marketing and ask them to do this. I mean, creating, one of the things that we've been working on with our AI platform is the ability to allow salespeople to quickly create a competitive analysis with their competitor vendor, but targeted very specifically to the customer, and creating a report that gives them here's your compare and contrast. These are the talking points you should address that you're going to be stronger in. These are the talking points you should realize that you're going to be at a weakness in. Before, people didn't necessarily go do that because it took too much time, or we didn't have the time to go do it. And now with a couple of buttons and a few things, you can get stuff like that, and we can elevate the quality. And I think from a company perspective, from a C-suite perspective, it might mean that you have better, more equipped, elevated people, and maybe you don't need as many. Or maybe if you keep the same amount, they're actually just going to close many more deals because they're just better all around equipped to do their job.
So you're saying elevate. Carson said efficiency. I'm going to bring a little bit of a different take on it, just on some of the things we're seeing. So a lot of the customers or prospects that we work with are manufacturers, distributors, people that sell large volumes of products, like literally maybe hundreds or thousands of SKUs, and they may do hundreds and thousands of quotes and orders a year. And what we're finding with AI is if I can analyze that data, the amount of data the insights that we're getting back by analyzing that data and then asking the AI what to do. Okay. So basically analyze the data, tell me what you're seeing, and then tell me what I should do about it. And the answers that we're getting back are mind blowing. Things that a normal seller would never think about or never know to do because they couldn't analyze that quantity of data. And I really do believe that AI, while it will make things more efficient and it will elevate the game, like you said, one of the biggest things that it will do next year is help you analyze large amounts of data, large amounts of something that you couldn't do on your own, and provide guidance to how you act, what you should actually do about it that you wouldn't be able to do on your own, or any individual wouldn't do on your own. I think that's going to be a major shift. And it's just, and the AI, the intelligence of the AI is just getting better and better all the time. So the results of that are going to get better and better.
Bob had a good question. Is it keeping up with current events? You run into the AI's training date limitations. Try Bing Chat Enterprise.
Yeah, or even Chat GPT now uses Bing, right, for real-time data that's on there. So you can, yeah, and it continues to get more. And then the enterprise version. Are they selling the enterprise version again? I heard they were putting that on hold because there were too many people wanting it or whatever.
The floodgates are open.
So, and then, yeah, as Bob says here, he says, I'm with Tom, AI can find correlations that are buried deep in a data lake. So you can create true leverage points with maximum effect. And this actually comes back full circle to what you were saying, Carson, about the CRM. What we're seeing is that if you have the right data in the CRM acts as basically a little data, or maybe more than a little, a data lake for you that you can analyze. And the things that are coming back are quite remarkable that you wouldn't get out of a report or a dashboard or a traditional way of looking at those things. So
yeah,
I think
the trends that can be spotted, that's the real power. And then it goes back to the whole Moneyball effect, being able to gravitate toward these signals that say this customer has a higher propensity to buy because they're doing this, this, and this. And me as a dumb sales guy, I never would have seen that.
The Moneyball reference. I think on that
well,
note,
and even
go ahead, Brian.
And even Carson, not dumb guys. I know we joke around, we say we're dumb, but we wouldn't have had the time to go find that before. And now we can. I mean, I think that's the key right there. There's a lot of things that we know we could do and we should do, but we just don't have the time or the resources to do it. And with AI, we will have time and resources because the engine can go do it like that.
And if you use AI in a way that helps you find your buyer and create better, stronger relationships where you're adding value and earning that right to be the trusted advisor, that is how AI is going to be the difference maker and help you win.
Yep. All right. Well, it's been a great year. Thank you, Brandon and Carson. Thank you, everybody who has listened and downloaded and participated. We have some really good guests. And I think Matt, we haven't gotten him booked yet, but speaking of Matt Dixon, he's offered to come back next year for kind of like a Q&A session on the Jolt effect. So I think we're absolutely going to need to do that.
And Tom, let's do, holiday requests for everybody. If you like the show and if you're listening to it, we assume you do, would you help us by making sure you subscribe on the podcast, share it with people that you think would find value in it. We're trying to jump up into a new category and get into that top 10%. It's not necessary, but it's something we want to do. It'd be kind of cool to say, hey, not only are we number one on Apple, but we've hit number one in some other platforms as well. So if we're adding value to you, that's our request. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, be great. All right. Well, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. We'll be, as we said, best of with Bryn Tillman next week. We'll be back the week after New Year's. Carson?
Until next year, happy social selling.